People ask me all the time, well, are you progressive? Are you conservative? Are you Republican? Are you a Democrat? And I was like, I'm the guy in charge of potholes. And
I'm just now meeting you. We are just getting acquainted.
Yeah, man.
But I am told you are the mayor hopeful of San Antonio, and you're going to bring a new day.
You know, my name's Manny. I only make my children call me sir.
Okay.
But I hope you'll call me Manny. It's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I'm not as scary as what you used to do in the military, but running towards strangers and with your hand out saying, "Hey, I'm Manny. You want to talk?" Right? You never know who you're going to come up to, and you never know what they're going to give you. Right? They're going to give you their life story. They're going to give you a warm welcome, or they're going to give you a punch in the nose because they're angry at government. And so, if ever I've done something, this may be the scariest thing I've ever done.
I got to imagine. What makes somebody wake up and say, like, I want to run for mayor?
My mom and dad left South America in the 70s when things were just terrible down there, right? This was the time of the Colombian cartels, and people were dying left and right. Opportunity was hard to find, and so they came here. And my dad was a very, very young doctor, and they raised me and said, we're moving to the land of freedom and the land of milk and honey, if you will, right? And opportunity. And they brought me up with this ferocious sense of gratitude, and I've always thought that gratitude needed to be expressed in deeds, right? In actions. And so I don't know if you know this, but my mom is the CEO of the Battered Women and Children Shelter here in San Antonio. It's one of the largest shelters of its kind in the entire United States. It's my sister is the one of the immediate past chairwomen of something called Child Advocates of San Antonio, and I have just dedicated my life to service. So while other people, follow the Cowboys on Sundays and have other kinds of hobbies, my mom, my sister, and I, our hobbies are service, right? And that's how we spend all of our free time. And now I decided, it's not enough, right? So I ran for city council, and now I do it all the time.
Right.
But to answer your question, we all knew who the candidates were ultimately going to be, because they'd been telegraphing their platforms and intentions for about a year. And I got to tell you, I just was uninspired. I was looking for someone who I can say, I believe in what they want. And I think the same thing you want and what your viewers want. And that is, I just want excellence, or at the very least, somebody who's just striving for excellence every day. And all I keep hearing from elected officials is, I want incremental improvement. I want things to be a little better than the last guy. And if you elect me, we're going to be a little less, poor, a little less inefficient, a little less, transparent. And so I don't know, man. I just I'm allergic to incrementalism. I think that's the one thing that you can there's few guarantees in life, but if you set low expectations, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You'll always end up accomplishing that goal, right? And I'm a believer that if you really want to knock it out of the park, then intend to knock it out of the park.
Absolutely.
Right. You may strike out, but my gosh, right? If you intend just to bunt, right, then you'll bunt every time and you'll be successful. So I just want a mayor who wants the best city in the world. I mean, the safest city in the world, the strongest, the smartest, the kindest, most authentic city in the world. And I hadn't heard anybody speak in those terms. And so the universe sometimes asks you that question, right? If not now, when? If not who? Why not you? And both answers just pointed at now and at me. And, I ran it by my wife and my mother-in-law, and they both said, you got our permission. And let's do it.
Cool.
Right? Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. And I don't have any political affiliations down here in San Antonio. I'm not sure that's running, but I can get behind anybody that wants to stand up and make a change, especially when they're coming from the community. And so, I've never been big into politics. And obviously, politics have been so pulverizing these past couple years. It's definitely made me start to pay more attention. I'll speak for myself. I can't speak for anybody, but you know, when it comes to looking at the politics up there, it looks impossible. There's nothing I'm going to be able to ever do to change it. We're stuck with it. But the one thing I keep hearing, and the one thing I've now started to understand, becoming older, coming into my 40s and all that, is you can change things on the local level.
Right.
And so now I've started to really pay attention to these kind of issues that what we have where I'm living and then the areas around, and really started to care. Now I actually feel like I'm a grown-up because I care what's going on in the community.
Well, I'll challenge you to think of, and anybody watching, I'll challenge you to think of it this way. Your life doesn't change in one way or another if Hunter Biden's emails said something that offends you, or if it says something that makes you happy. Your life doesn't change one way or another if the Confederate statues, stay up or down. It doesn't change if, the names of one of the Army bases or Air Force bases changes, right? And yet that dominates so much of our consciousness. Those squabbles, right, turn into, existential wars, and families get divided over these fights in DC. And I have found that people's lives are materially impacted zero by these toxic culture wars, right? Yeah. Whereas every day you wake up, right, and from the moment you wake up until you go to sleep, most of the things that happen to you are impacted by local government, right? I mean, this building that we're in is beautiful, but we know that we'll be safe if it happens to catch fire because there's sprinkler systems, right? That's not a federal thing. That's a local thing. Yeah. Your local streets, right? You made it here alive today, right? Because you drove on a street that was well constructed, right? Your water was clean. We have on-demand energy. You have police that'll answer your 911 call within about 7 minutes because of local government, not because, Ted Cruz is screaming and yelling about something, or Chip Roy or Donald Trump or, Nancy Pelosi are screaming about something. And so I think that our attention is sucked away on the things that, are so abstract.
Do you think that's on purpose?
Yeah, of course it is, right? They know exactly.
That's by design, right?
I mean, they know what squeezes our amygdalas, right? And what releases endorphins, what releases dopamine. And so they just keep, squeezing. And it's really hard for local government and for real change to break through that noise, right? Yeah. And so the other thing too, man, is I'll say it this way. Did you know that when George Washington retired, he wrote a letter to America, right? I read the letter, and part of that letter says, hey, political parties are really bad. Like, don't do it, right? America, I'm warning you, this is going to kill you guys. It's going to turn into toxic tribalism, right? And people are going to be more interested in the tribe than what's good about, their community. And he was right. Yeah. And so people ask me all the time, well, are you progressive? Are you conservative? Are you Republican? Are you a Democrat? And I was like, I'm the guy in charge of potholes and parks and streets and, whether your water's clean or not. I was like, I've never met a Republican or Democrat pothole, right? And to be honest with you, instead of asking me which party I'm in, ask me whether or not, I love my city and, what I'm going to do, to make your city a little bit smarter, a little bit safer, a little bit stronger. I was like, that's the real question. And that people are leading with Republican, Democrat, right? Shows you how tribal we've become. And that's just not healthy, man.
Right. So let me ask you a question because this is an issue that's very near and dear in my heart. I don't go a week unfortunately seeing the news of seeing some kid in high school or middle school dying from fentanyl. Yeah. I've personally gone around in my community and tried to talk with these schools, sit down with them. I'm met with yellow tape every time. For whatever reason, they won't bring somebody like me in. I've spoken all over. I've spoken at schools. I've spoken at Fortune 500 companies. I always use this as an example to kind of give people the context of the conversations I had with these schools, but the one always sticks out to me, and I sat down with their 8 most high up people at that school. Just about everybody was on board. There was one woman who she said they had it all under control. Now, the only reason I was even at that school is because 2 kids had just died from a fentanyl overdose. So she had said we have everything under control. I had asked what they were doing, and she told me how she personally showed the student council a 10-minute PowerPoint on the dangers of drugs and alcohol.
Right.
I politely told that woman if a teacher ever came in to show me that, I would put my head down and went to sleep.
Right.
I'm willing to bet like someone like myself with a little bit lived experience and a little bit different voice can come in there and grab their attention in a little bit different way. And so it baffles me, and I've actually had people sit in that very chair who work with the schools who say, oh, that's great, yeah, we're going to bring you in, and then nothing ever happens, but these kids continue to die. And so I'm asking you as a mayor, like, fentanyl is a worldwide problem, it's a nationwide problem, but as far as San Antonio goes, do you have any plans for that, or what do you see that could even begin to start to do something about that?
First of all, never in the history of humanity has there been a drug that has been more weaponized than fentanyl. And by weaponized, I mean it's designed, right, it's designed to dig its claws into you immediately, right, and never let go. That any adult thinks that a PowerPoint, right, will somehow serve as a shield, that is incredibly misguided. Or actually, it's just it's the height of dumbassery.
This is a school, one of the biggest schools in one of the biggest cities in the entire state of Texas. Telling me this,
it's really stupid. And so I'm sorry you had to encounter that, but I'm more sorry for those kids, right, who are whose leadership at school believes that that's a good idea. I will tell you that what we have done at the city is the beginning of a really important conversation. Every city in America is struggling with this, and they're struggling with it in the same way, right? We all see it: men and women sleeping under bridges, men and women panhandling on every corner. The face of homelessness, the face of panhandling, the face of veteran mental health has changed since the introduction of fentanyl, and it's not the same homeless person that we remember pre-fentanyl, right? Entire families are out there begging now, just to be able to feed the habit of one of the members of their families, right? And so we have we're up against a thermonuclear, drug. And it's not a law enforcement problem, right? I mean, you can continue to say, close the border, right? You can continue to say, those bad cartels. The problem is that they're selling a product, and if people were addicted to coffee, they'd be in coffee business, not the fentanyl business, right? Yeah. The problem is that it's a local addiction, and we don't talk about addiction the way that we should, right? We talk about it in terms of, it requires a law enforcement response, right? It's a mental health issue, right? And it's not, man. It's a mom and dad issue. It's brothers talking to sisters. It's teachers holding each other accountable, holding parents accountable. I think the next mayor needs to set a goal, a really audacious, bold goal, right? And if the next mayor comes out and says, we will be the very first city to eradicate fentanyl addiction in our city, right? And we will dedicate ourselves until we reach that point, we will dedicate ourselves completely to it. I think that's the first step, right? And that means throwing resources at it, right? And maybe even shifting existing resources away from nice to haves and shifting it to the need to have, which is fentanyl overdose prevention and fentanyl addiction prevention. So I'll give you an example. You know that we at the city of San Antonio pay millions to attract the NCAA Final Four.
Okay.
That's fine, right? But I mean, the NCAA is a multi-billion-dollar organization. Why are we, the taxpayers, paying to bring a basketball game here to San Antonio while people are dying under bridges?
I agree.
Right. And so I think it's also a reprioritization of what's important to us, right? So with the same zeal and vigor with which we pay to attract a basketball game and host Floridians and Ohioans and people from Kansas and Kentucky, the circle doesn't square, right? That we're not chasing the solution for the San Antonio veteran who's living under the bridge on the I-10 in De Zavala. Yeah. So I think the next mayor needs to be ferocious in opposing the silly spends, right? And so, what would I do is I think you just volunteered to be the czar of fentanyl addiction prevention. I mean, I'm serious, right?
Well, I'm saying, and there's a reason I'm saying all this. And then anybody that it's saying what you're saying, like, and really do it, like, to me, if there was a mayor of a large city like San Antonio that stood up that loud and talked about it and is doing what you're doing, to me, that would get national attention.
Yeah, no,
and I would do anything to use this platform or anything to help you accomplish that.
So people criticize me for focusing on one issue above all others, right? And for me, that issue is domestic violence.
Okay.
Right. And for reasons that are really personal that I won't share with you, but it is. I wake up and go to sleep every night thinking about domestic violence and, you know, how poorly a job we do. And I've spent the last 8 years pounding my fist and saying, you know, there is no more important problem right now to me than domestic violence, because you can draw a straight line from addiction to drugs to domestic violence to hunger, domestic violence to illiteracy, domestic violence to health outcomes, domestic violence to joblessness, et cetera, et cetera. And I've made the promise that, you know, San Antonio will be admired by every other city in America for how we solve for domestic violence by the time I'm done. But it requires a mayor saying, this is our number one priority, right? And you got other candidates out there, man, in every race all over America, right? They all pick an issue, but they're the same issues, like economic development. I will make sure that, you know, all these businesses will make billions here in my city so that we can get, you know, make our workforce happy.
And that's why most people let it go in one ear and out the other and don't pay attention.
And we go to the neighborhoods and talk to them about economic development. They're like, hey, you know, I got a kid who's addicted. I got, you know, my next door neighbor who's being hit by her husband. I've got, you know, my seniors who live right across the street from me, you know, they both have dementia and they don't have anybody to care for them. And so, you know, people are living lives. They're not living issues. They're not living political issues. And I think that's the other thing that a mayor needs to do, man. He needs to look out into an ocean of 1.5 million faces, which are the San Antonians, and see human beings, many of whom are doing well, but many of whom are just barely surviving, right? And see them for what they are, moms and dads and grandparents and kids, not see them as workforce, right? A voting bloc, right? Investors. And it, you know, when we compartmentalize and silo the world that way, we suck the humanity out of it, right? And the solution to addiction is to look at every single human being who is addicted as a human being who's addicted, not as an addict requiring services. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it absolutely makes sense. And, you know, what we deal with in this world is the stigma of addiction, right? And the one thing I've discovered as I've traveled around and spoken all that, we're all recovering from something. There's not anybody listening to this right now that's not related to or directly connected to somebody who's suffering from addiction, mental health, like you're saying, domestic violence. I just went and spoke at a women's prison, the Coleman unit in Lockhart, Texas yesterday. Amazing. Second time there, loved it. They have an amazing program there where they're actually setting these women up with business plans. They're doing business pitches. It's almost like they're on Shark Tank where they're set up for success once they get out. But I spoke to over 200 women yesterday, and there wasn't a story that didn't substance abuse, mental health, domestic violence. The whole time I was in prison, I'll be honest, like I know I had done wrong, and I'd done a lot of wrong. It was just that I was there. But as far as the addiction stuff goes, like I didn't steal from anybody to do it. Like I had an issue, I had a problem. The actual reason why I was there, whether I deserved to be there for other reasons or not, the reason I was there, it didn't get me sober. It didn't help me in any way. And so if we could start gearing things more towards education with young people, letting them really know truly what it is. I went and spoke at a private school recently where they had to talk with me afterwards because I said the word needle. They wanted me to like censor that word.
Screw that, man.
That's the whole reason we have a problem is because we're censoring this conversation to these young children.
You and I talked about this before the camera started rolling, right? People are literally afraid of words, right? I mean, like we're a country that began with a celebration of some really important words, right? Enshrined in the Constitution. And there's some really uncomfortable ones in there, right?
Yeah.
And those words have had to be amended over and over again because we didn't get it right the first time, right? Yep. And we keep perfecting it with words, right? And to think that today, you know, people are so afraid of words that teachers can't even speak, you know, what the difficult truths. My wife is a teacher. and she's your mom is too, yeah. And this morning she and I, while we were getting ready for work, she's like, "Hey, there's a chapter in a book that I'm supposed to teach, right? And the chapter is is now illegal under a Trump administrative order." And she says, "But it's such a common sense chapter." I said, "Well, what does it say?" And she says, "Treat everybody with respect, right? Don't harass each other. Don't retaliate against each other. Do a good job, be a good human." And I said, "So what's the recommendation you're getting from the school?" "They're telling me that I should teach the chapter but not advocate for the principles in the chapter." Think about that, right? I mean, you might as well just call the chapter decency. Right? I mean, be a decent human being and be decent to other people. How do you teach decency without advocating for decency?
Well,
right? And my wife is afraid, right? And there's other teachers who are afraid of losing their jobs just for saying, "Hey, it's okay to be decent to to each other. We're here to learn and just to improve ourselves." That somehow is now terrifying, right? I get, before we walked in here, you had a pillow up here, right? That says "fuck drugs," right? And my campaign manager, who I love very much, said, "We can't have that pillow next to him because somebody will clip that, right? They'll put it on the internet. They'll replace the word drugs. They'll put it." And we live in such an ugly world where, just my having just said the words "fuck drugs," right, could get doctored and then, pumped out and, to where my own campaign manager is terrified of me being around the word, right? Much less saying it. She's probably turning green right now because I said it, but
it makes you. I'm glad you did because it makes you real.
But we have, we're supposed to be the land of the true, the land of the brave, the land of the courageous, and we're scared of words, man. Right? There's a lot of things to be scared about in the world, but words.
Yeah.
And the word needle. What are you supposed to talk about? That's the delivery method for the most deadly drugs.
Can I ask you an honest question?
Yeah.
So when we were growing up, like sticks and stones
and
all that stuff. We grew up in a very different time now with social media and stuff like that, granted. But I think a lot of that helped. I think a lot of that was good. It lets you know where you are in the world. You know what I mean? Like there's life lessons I think you get in that, and trying to bumper that for kids or take away words or do that stuff. Like I don't feel like we're doing them any you're not doing them any favors by me not saying needle around this kid or him not hearing that word. Now he just would, do you realize we're dealing with fentanyl? This kills people every day, and you want to be soft in the message of how we deliver this.
Get this, I pumped out something online years ago that said, "Hey, San Antonio, real men don't hit women." Right? That's ultimately that's the underlying message of our domestic violence campaign. Real men don't hit women. 100%. Boys don't hit girls, right? I had a bunch of women jump all over me, right? Saying that I was being, that my masculinity was toxic, right? And that by invoking this thought of real men, what is a real man, right? And I'm like, who gives a shit? Stop
one that
debating
doesn't hit
me.
Women. What
right?
do you mean?
I was like,
we
stop
just
debating me on the, let's talk substance as opposed to form, right? So, your shirt and your show is "I am redemption," right? I'll tell you what I am, man. I'm unapologetically honest and ready to have the most difficult conversations, even if it means that people clutch their pearls. And in my business, right, everybody is so conditioned to clutch their pearls whenever they hear something that, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said it that way, right? How unstatesman, how undiplomatic, and how uncaring that he might actually hurt some feelings. And what I've been telling people is, hey man, if I'm elected mayor, you're going to have to buy a barrel of pearls because you're going to be clutching them a lot, right?
Good. So I got a good question for you then.
Yeah.
All right. This is a good one.
Yeah.
So how does your wife feel when she walks in and a student tells you he's a cat?
So I married
I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
I'll tell you, she's never had that experience. We talk about this, but I think my wife would tell him, yeah, you know what? Sit down. You got homework to do, man. If you got time to be a cat, you got time to be studying, and you got time to to read and get better grades, right? I guarantee you, anybody out there who thinks they're a cat is probably not on the dean's list. Is not working hard to get the best grades, pass the SAT, and get into a good college. And so, my wife is a very pragmatic woman who understands that the mission of a school is to get you to be a better adult, right, and more prepared for the future. And
there, just real quick, shout out to your wife, because there's I think hopefully everybody at least had that one teacher teacher that believed in them, that one teacher that did him a favor or whatever like that. But a good teacher, someone like that, can make an impact on you the rest of your life.
Yeah, and I had one of those. His name was Coach Gutierrez, right? And Coach Gutierrez would, hear us talking at lunch and hear us talking about our friends, and he'd call me over. He goes, Manny, get over here. And I said, yeah. And he goes, I heard you say this at lunch. I said, yeah, coach. And he goes, that's got to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I said, oh, really? And he goes, from this point forward, this is the way I want you to think about it. And don't say that again, man. It made you sound like a dumbass, right? Wow. If any teacher today were to say that at any ISD, they'd get fired.
Right.
Right. And they'd get strung up and canceled, and they'd probably never be able to get another job again. Right. And I've always told people the world would be such a better place if everybody just spoke the truth and stopped sprinkling sugar on it, stopped massaging it, and stopped clipping away the rough spots so that it's, not offensive. And so one can tell lies by omission, right? I mean, if you don't tell the difficult part of it, right, then it's a lie.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that there is, right now, especially today, that there's room for equivocation on the important issues. Of course, you got to talk about needles, right? Oh, there's something, I don't know if you've seen it here in my district. We put up these signs that said, hey, it's okay to not roll your window down and give to panhandlers. Instead, please redirect that giving to Goodwill Industries, Salvation Army, the Battered Women's Social Shelter, your favorite addiction recovery program, your school, your church. Dude, thousands of nasty tweets of reactions. You're a monster. You hate poor people, right? Because of you, I'm going to give to people out the window. Don't tell me what to do. And
you are throwing your money. You are flushing your money down the toilet. As somebody that used to be in that world, I promise you that money is not going towards anything good. You are only giving them their means to continue the same behavior.
And by the way, I've gone out on the streets. Thank you for validating that for me. Because I go out on the streets and I talk to these men and women, and I'm like, hey, let's get in the car. Let's go to Haven for Hope. I'll buy you a meal. Let's go, let's get you cleaned up. Let me help you. And almost all of them say, are you kidding me? De Zavala and I-10, this is a really fantastic intersection. I make a lot of money here, right? And if I leave here, someone's going to take over. And then you go to like where they're sitting and where their stuff is, and it's just hypodermic needles everywhere, man. And you know what's heartbreaking? Is that the floor is covered in pennies, nickels, and dimes, but never quarters or dollars, right? And so I talked to the cops and I talked to these men and women. I was like, what's up with the pennies, nickels, and dimes? You guys don't want that?
They throw them away.
Like, yeah, they throw them away. They're just like, the guy who sells me the stuff doesn't take pennies, nickels, and dimes, right? And also I can't walk into a 7-Eleven and buy a beer or even a sandwich, right? I can't walk into H-E-B. I can't walk into McDonald's and just give them, 800 pennies and say, sell me a burger and a small drink, right?
Yeah.
And yet my San Antonians continue to hand money out their window. And I keep trying to explain to them all that money ends up in two places. One, on the ground, right? Or two, in the pockets of some dude who got fentanyl from Juarez or Tijuana. Right.
The dude that bought the gun that's going to kill your kid.
And yet, the point I'm trying to make is that the heat that I get online for just saying, let's rethink this whole panhandling thing. It's not as good as you guys think it is.
Yeah.
I think that's what's broken, man, is that people live in this world where it's a binary choice, right? You either love homeless people or you hate them, right? And there's no place for a third alternative, which is I want what's best for them, and doing that is not what's best for them. Right. Supporting the agencies who help them is what's best for them. And because it doesn't fit in to one of the two clean, comfortable boxes, then anybody in the middle is a monster, right? And the world's not easy. The world isn't a choice between one or two boxes, right? The world's a complicated place, man.
What I want to say about addiction and all that, I work with addicts every day.
Yeah.
The people who make it out on the street, when they're living on the street, usually unanimously there's mental health. There's mental health at play. Usually. Obviously there's cases where there's not, but most of those people, they're not capable of another way of life. Like, they don't know another way of life. But what I will tell you, as long as they're standing on that corner, as long as you show up every day and you give them a little bag of food and you give them a couple dollars in their pocket and they get that from a couple people, that's what they do every day, and that's their destiny. They have no reason to ever change. I needed to be sitting in a prison cell with people not picking up the phone anymore. I needed to be miserable until I took a look around at my life and realized, like, I need to change some things. If those people are capable of that, then that's what needs to happen. As long as somebody's continuing to give their means, it's not the way. I know you think you're doing well, but it's the same as a mother who continues to give her son money every day, knowing that it's going towards shooting dope up his arm.
Man, and there's a lot of moms like that, right?
My mother, so many mothers, because it's everything in a mother's instinct to protect their son, to help them,
see them not hurting,
to believe that they're going to do well and all that stuff. But when the disease of addiction has you, it's not them, it's the disease anymore.
You know, I always tell people when we talk about this panhandling phenomenon that it's a symptom of a bigger problem, right? However, somewhere, right, there's a mom who's crying herself to sleep knowing that her kid is panhandling to feed an addiction, right? And then when you drive by somebody on the street, see the human, right? Don't fall into the trap of just repeating what you've always thought, right? And there's two camps here, right? One is bum, go get a job, right? The other one is, oh my gosh, poor human being, I'm going to roll the window down and give him money, right? Neither of those are the solution, right? The solution is to see the human in need of help, right? And they need some very specific help, and that help does not include enabling, right? But that help also doesn't include cruelty, right? And hard-heartedness. And so what is the solution? The solution is work, right? And it requires investment in the person, and that's hard, right? Because the person who's doing the panhandling, giving out the window, that's drive-by charity, man. It's like it's getting your dinner from from the drive-through. It's doing your charity through a drive-through, and then the person who drives through and just says bum, that's a really easy way to get out of the work of being a human being, right? And my heart breaks at how few folks there are out there who are willing to roll up their sleeves to do what you're doing, to do what the good people at the Salvation Army are doing, at Haven for Hope are doing. There's not enough of those angels, man. And now we're living through a moment in American history where cynicism and meanness and trolling online is what passes for values and leadership. Right. And I don't know. I really wish that I wish that our leaders would be more engaging in making people want to be better humans. I read something, get this, feel free to use it because I'm using it and somebody else wrote it. Our job, right, as dads, as employers, as leaders, as opinion makers and opinion and thinkers is not to drag the horse to water, right? It's also not to make the horse drink, right? Our job is to make the horse thirsty, right? And that stuck with me. And I think that you're doing that on this podcast, right? You're giving people something to think about, and you're hoping, like I'm hoping, is that a conversation like this that somebody's watching and listening to leads to them saying, hey, I can really do something here, right? And so here's some real simple action items, man. Get online, go to your favorite charity and hit the volunteer button. You don't even have to give money. Hit the volunteer button. Give 1 hour to any of these organizations. That frees up one of their subject matter experts to actually go out into the field and help people, right? If you can give 1 hour, and that volunteering can include making photocopies, licking envelopes and stuffing them and stamping them so we can send out, education materials, answering phone calls. But these organizations, they live on volunteerism. And I'm telling you folks, leaving comments, right, online and debating online, there's nothing that you are doing for the world by doing that, right? Like, get off your ass and go volunteer, right? Exactly. Go do a little sweating and working, right?
So me, as someone, as a local individual and living through these past couple of years of this pulverizing, I just lost the word, government and all these things, debates and elections and all that stuff. So me, as somebody who sits there and like, I'm out on it now. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of all the debate going back and forth. It doesn't matter or anything like that. You, as a local elected or a hopeful local elected official, how do you start to give people back their sense of being able to trust in government or trust local officials or trust the government?
So first of all, government has done a lot of damage to the trust relationship. And we continue to do damage every day because instead of governing, right, and instead of solving problems, we're out there trying to get likes online and trying to get quoted and trying to get invited to podcasts, right, and have our picture in the paper. That is our driving reason for existing. It's no longer about service. There's few of us out there that see this as, a sacrifice that we make. And the sacrifice, guys, is real, right? I spend less time with my kids than I want to. I spend less time with my wife than I want to. I could be doing a lot of other things, right? And I could be making more money, but instead I'm literally giving it away to people who probably won't vote, right? The people that I serve are clearly the voters and taxpayers, but I use my time to focus on the folks that are barely holding on, right? And I feel like the big guy upstairs, that's why he put me here on earth, right? Is to leave it a little better than I found it, right? But how do you motivate people? You go to them as opposed to saying, come to me, right? And so at City Hall, for example, we have this thing called Citizens to be Heard. It's a Wednesday meeting at 5 p.m., right? And we say, if you are a citizen and you wish to be heard, bring your concerns and complaints to City Hall and we will hear you. So we at City Hall, we sit there on the dais and we wait for people to show up. Now, first they got to drive downtown through all that construction, then they got to pay for parking, then they got to somehow find us at exactly 5 p.m. When everybody's just getting off work, right? And what is the result, man? Is that we get the same 4 dudes every single time, and 3 of them talk to us about the black helicopters in the sky and the radio chips in their head, and then the other one, is just there to talk to us about national politics, right? And it is the most spectacular waste of time and waste of resources. So I've made a very deliberate choice, and I got heat from it for the paper. I just stopped showing up to the meeting, right? Because my time is valuable, and I'm not talking to real constituents and voters with real problems. So I just go to my community on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. and I go to their neighborhoods, right? And I go visit them at their homes and I go talk to small businesses. And you know what they tell me? They're like, you're the first guy that's actually ever taken the time just to come and check on me and just say, how you doing? What can I do to help, right? Are you running for re-election? I'm like, no. I do this every Wednesday, right? And I come to you, right? And then the second thing I did is I discovered that there's a lot of people out there who really do want to roll up their sleeves and be a part of the solution. And so, but they don't know how. And so every once in a while, somebody comes up with a great idea, like, what are you going to do about fentanyl? And then I say, you just volunteered to be the czar of fentanyl, right? Solutions. I do that all over town, and I've recruited, tons of really good San Antonians. And I said, you're doing this. And kidding, I always say it's illegal to say no to a councilman, right? And I rope them in, and suddenly, they're like, oh, okay, right? With that pressure, they say yes, but then they love it and they stick to it. I've got people serving on these boards and commissions for years now.
That's changed within the community.
It's changing them. And then they turn around and they're like, I trust government now, right? I really do see that my government is full of people that are trying to help. And then I do the third thing, which I think is really important. We are being conditioned by Fox News and MSNBC and all the media to think that the people in the government are these wicked people who wake up in the morning trying to figure out how to ruin your lives and steal and control you, right? Well, the reality is,
right.
Well, maybe, right? But I can tell you that in San Antonio, the city of San Antonio is run by 13,000 men and women who all live in my neighborhoods and your neighborhood. They all go to church, the same church we go to. Their kids go to the same schools we go to. They play in the same parks. They go to the same taqueria, right? And they drink at the same coffee shop that all of us do. And when I talk to them after 8 years, I've come to learn they want the exact same things everybody else wants. And that these really, really kind, smart people gave up jobs in the private sector, right? And they know their worth, their competitive worth in terms of salary, what they would get in the private sector. And yet they stay at the city and choose to work entire careers being, the person in charge of trash pickup, right? The person in charge of animal vaccinations, the person in charge of just getting the word out about, nutrition programs for seniors, right? I've come to learn that government on a local level is run by good people, man, right? Now, the most flawed folks are probably the ones sitting, at the top floor of City Hall, right? But the people who work and come every single day, they deserve a lot more respect than they're getting. And we politicians, we steal the credit that they're due. But I think that's the way you return trust also, right? So I always start my meetings with town halls by naming each person on city staff who showed up to talk about the street project or the park project. And I ask them, where do you live? Right? And they give me their neighborhood name. And I said, all right, what's your church? What's your favorite taqueria in that neighborhood, right? And I make them human beings. And then I'll tell the crowd, these are your neighbors, right? And treat them like as if they were your neighbors. And you should see the quality of the conversation changes.
Yeah.
Like, people come in ready to fight, and then they were like, well, no, I'm not going to fight with my neighbor. I actually want to have a conversation and, and experience some sharing of ideas. And I think that we in government have that obligation to remind folks that this is a government for the people and of the people, very genuinely, locally. I can't speak to that up in DC, right? I don't know because I'm not there, but I can tell you here locally, and it applies to every city. These are people who serve in local government are good people, man.
Right.
You know?
I got an analogy for you, and you had said something earlier about how, you know, a lot of people in politics now are jockeying to get articles and podcasts and likes and comments and all that stuff. And you were saying that's not you. You're just out here grinding. And so I'm very much that way. And so I got into a conversation with a woman in the gym who I know really well, and we were going back and forth, and this will make sense in a minute, but we were going back over the forth how guys tend to skip leg day. And I didn't realize that girls skip upper body day.
Right.
And so we're sitting there talking about that phenomenon and going back and forth. And I was like, well, what do you notice on a guy? Like, what's the first thing you notice? She was like, well, his butt and his legs. And I was like, see, guys are thinking it's chest, back. And so they're always skipping legs. And she's like, well, what about for you? And I was like, in all honesty, I don't look at anything. The grind is that's what I notice. I notice someone that's in there day in, day out. They don't care what anybody thinks. It doesn't matter what they're wearing, but they're grinding. That's what I notice. And then people on social media, it's very, very easy, I think, for most people to see somebody that's posting something for recognition or somebody that just, this is what they do. I was speaking with an individual recently, and I was like, dude, it's cool, man, it's cool to go in the gym and you could post your little selfie every day, let everybody know you're in the gym, or you could bare your head and then show up 6 months later and walk into a room and people snap their head around like, what happened to him? It's much more powerful when people notice you grinding than you talking about you grinding. And so just coming from just one individual right here, if I was gonna vote for somebody, that's what I want to see, is somebody grinding, not somebody who's going for likes and all that stuff.
So I'm gonna take a different route at getting to the point.
Okay.
When I was in high school, my senior year, I competed in Mr. El Paso bodybuilding contest.
Let's go.
And
are you from El Paso? My wife's from
I went
El
to
Paso.
high school there. Yeah, but
I love El Paso.
I came in 6th place.
Okay.
But I got a consolation prize. I got 2 of them, best calves. And then the second one, which I was super proud of until my friends made fun of me, was #1 poser. And my friends were like, let me get this straight. I was like, you're the best poser? I was like, you're #1. I was like, yeah, I get it. But I spent all my time in gyms.
Yeah.
And back then there was no such thing as selfies and all that. But I've also paid attention on social media. There's all these people that just take pictures of themselves in front of the mirror, spreading their lats, right, or showing off their triceps, or or videos of them squatting more than they should. But you know what nobody ever takes a picture of is the guy who's spotting you. Nobody ever says, check out the guy who spotted me. He didn't have to, but he chose to. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Right? Can you imagine how much better the world would be if we celebrated the guy who spotted us, the guy who's helping hold us up and pushing us, right, and telling us you can do it, as opposed to putting pictures of ourselves and breaking our arms off so we can pat our backs, right? I wish I could tell you that, if I went to the gym and I was in the shape I was back then, that would be the only picture that I would take. I don't know. But man, I should be that guy. And I'm trying to raise my kids to be those people. And so I'm going to tell you what I tell my kids. If you're going to lead out front and lead loud, right? And be the best you possibly can be. But if you see somebody else who's leading a little better than you are, then get the hell out of the way and get behind that person, right? That but is not what we tell kids these days, right? We tell them, do it on your own, right? You remember that ad? We are an army of one, right? That pissed me off. And it pissed off a lot of people because the army is not an army of one. An army is a group. And what I believe, man, to my heart.
It's just saying a collective one.
Right. But people were interpreting it as like, no, man, you're just celebrating the individual. The army is a collective, right? And that debate was really interesting. But here's what I believe, genuinely. I believe that I am a flawed individual, right? I am defined by my strengths, but I'm equally defined by my flaws. And I believe genuinely that I'm very imperfect. But you know what's perfect is the collective, right? The group is perfect. And when a group of people get together to solve a problem, that's perfection. Right. And the bigger your group, you got more and more perfection, because when you get a group of good people moving in one direction, the result is always going to be good. Right. And I always remind folks that, in the history of the world, there's only been one human being that has walked the surface of the planet, right, who was perfect, and that's my mother-in-law. But the rest of us, we got warts and hairs, and we do dumb things, right, and we make mistakes. And so if you're aware of your flaws and your prejudices and your biases, you're better off. There was this rap song in the 90s. I forget what, I remember the album was The Gas Face. I don't remember the artist, but in one of the songs he says, he is stupid, but he knows that he is stupid, and that almost makes him smart. Think about that, right? And I think about that all the time, right? That maybe the wisest thing you can do is admit to yourself, I don't know everything, right? I may not even know anything,
Hands
right?
down.
But I'm surrounded by people, and we're trying.
Right.
So back to something you said at the beginning, this school district is like, hey, we got it on our own. Why wouldn't you want the help of a person who's a subject matter expert in being an addict that's recovered? Why wouldn't you want that, right?
Asking myself the same thing.
Yeah, and all I can assume is that these folks have become convinced of their own expertise, right? And so closed off to the possibility that there's somebody out there that might know something that they don't,
right,
and that it's okay to talk to them. And so that's why I love this podcast, man. I mean, you're speaking some really, really difficult truths.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. I appreciate it.
But I gotta ask you,
yes,
right? Who's Bart Crow?
Who's Bart Crow?
Yeah.
You don't know Bart Crow?
Man, I'm an elected official. I live in my car listening to podcasts and I'm sorry, listening to news.
Right.
What is Bart Crow, and why is that important to you?
But Bart Crow's a good buddy of mine. Bart Crow's what would you call it? International recording artist.
Okay.
But he's definitely got a name here in Texas, especially Austin. He's got a huge song called "Wear My Ring." But Bart and I actually got to know each other in the gym.
Yeah.
I had no idea who he was or how big he was in music or that he had hits or anything. But we started talking, and humbly he came and he was having issues in the same kind of field that I was.
Oh,
and
really?
we continued to work together. And he's come on the show and talked about it publicly, I think, for the first time. And we've just remained very good friends. And,
San Antonian?
He's in Austin. He's an Austin guy, but he's down here performing quite a bit though. We just did our own sober South by Southwest event during South by, and he was our headlining performer. So good buddy of mine, good human being, good American right there.
Man, if we had more Bart Crows in the world, I think it'd be a better place.
We do. Yeah. He'll love that you said that.
Yeah.
But sir, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on. I know you're a busy man. I loved everything you said. I wish you good luck.
Hey, so you noticed
real quick, if you do get in there, I hope you're about that action and everything you said, and I am expecting a phone call so we can tackle this fentanyl thing.
Yeah, I'll recruit you day one, man.
Let's do it.
I will tell you, this is gonna sound weird, right? But I love you, dude. I know I just met you.
Love you too, brother.
But I love you. I love you because you're just putting the heart out there and you're doing the work. And
thank you, man.
I'm looking for humans like you. And there's fewer and fewer of you guys, and I'm glad that I met another person to add to the perfect collective.
Me too, sir.
Yeah,
me too. Yeah. So the way we like to wrap up the show, you've been so gracious to come on, share some of your experience and some of your journey. But if you take a look into your camera over here,
okay,
maybe throw out a couple I am statements to let the people know who you truly are.
I am ferocious in my desire for a more compassionate world.